Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Jason Davis with you. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, soccermorning.com. Music today brought to us by Alex DeYoung. Very nice. I guess that's Smooth Sounds. I don't know. Does that kind of Smooth Sounds? Joe Satriani, who I've heard of, but have not really. I'm not a guitar guy. I'm not. I'll admit to it. I like it. Nothing wrong with that music. Thank you, Alex. But I'm not a guitar guy. I mean, I like guitars, but I don't fetishize. I don't know. Whatever I'm trying to say. It is Monday. Happy Monday to you. How's your soccer? Hope your soccer was good. How's your football? Hope your football was good. It was one of those crazy weekends. Tons and tons happening. It's in that for us Americans, for us MLS fans, for us NASL fans and USL Pro fans down the line. It's that time of year. If you care about anything happening in Europe, and I'm a Premier League guy, I watch the Premier League. I don't have a club. I'm not. I'm not a. I haven't declared for anybody, but I watch the Premier League. I enjoy the football there. If you're one of those people, the worlds have the schedules have collided. You get to watch your Premier League and your MLS, and try to make time for your family and everything else. And it was a good weekend for that. Lots of things happening. Some title implications in the Premier League. We got Luke Moore on in about half an hour to talk through those. Sunderland beating Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. You didn't see it coming. Josie Altidore with the play and the foul by Azpilicueta that results in the penalty that ends up with Chelsea losing at home to Sunderland. Shocking. And again, title ramifications. Next weekend, Chelsea and Liverpool are going to go at it, and we may have our champion right there. I know Manchester City still has games in hand and the like. They play today. They play West Brom today. Any chance at all of a shock? That is at the Etihad, right? Any chance at all of a shock? West Brom at City. I don't know. In terms of MLS, because there was plenty happening there as well. Although I looked at this and I watched some of these games. Can't watch everything, but I watched some of these games. You look at the schedule. You look at the score lines. Those first 4 games or so didn't really give us much. First 3 games. A scoreless draw, Philly and Houston. A scoreless draw, Colorado and San Jose. And Chicago, New England, 1-1. You had to wait for Vancouver and LA for somebody to actually put some goals on the board. Obviously, Sporting Kansas City dropped 4 on Montreal. How bad is Montreal? I don't know. We'll talk to Charlie Boehm to go over the MLS results in less than 10 minutes. So hang on for that. Our friend Charlie from Soccer Wire, MLSsoccer.com, U.S. Soccer Players. Excellent stuff from Charlie, as always. Looking forward to that. Because there are some issues here for some of these clubs. Portland remains winless. Now, I know going away to RSL is never a good time for the Portland Timbers. And maybe you didn't expect much out of that game if you're a Timbers fan. And I said, my comment was, the invitations for the committee to determine if the Portland Timbers should panic are out in the mail right now. But there are reasons to think, okay, this game, not really the game to get over the hump and break the skid. But when you haven't won yet, it obviously takes on bigger implications. It's more important than it ever was before. And maybe when you looked at the schedule before the year started, you said, okay, we're going to go away to RSL. If we get a draw out of that, I'll be happy. They didn't manage that. They didn't manage the draw, and they have all of this bad feelings leading into this game because they haven't won yet. 4 teams still winless in MLS. Somebody asked me on Twitter, who's on the hot seat first? Well, if not Caleb Porter, I'll tell you that right now. That's not happening. That man's seat is not hot. Maybe it should be. I don't know. Seems early. Did very well last season. You got to give him a chance to build on it. But his seat's not hot. This is the opportunity. I'm going to take this opportunity right here to remind you that Soccer Morning is listener supported. Soccermorning.com is where you can go to find out how you can help support the show. We have had a lot of people step up, and thank you very, very much. I think last time we checked 40% towards our monthly goal. I'd like to, obviously make a push in the last week and a half of the month here. But thank you to everybody who stepped up so far. And really, supporting Soccer Morning is a twofold thing. Number one, you help us keep the show going. That's direct. That's immediate. That's the impact you have. Number two, the more people that step up and support the show and show that they like the show, And look, there's nothing more. There's nothing that indicates you care about something more than giving a little bit of scratch to that program or project or concept or whatever. And that is important for us. We have to demonstrate what value this show has so we can move on into a future that doesn't involve direct support. That's what we're trying to do here. Build, and you guys are helping out. I very much appreciate that. So soccermorning.com is where you can go to support the show. All right. I saw this yesterday, and I can't remember which game this was at. Okay, this is at the Chicago New England game, which was the NBC Sports game this weekend. Interesting choice, but whatever. I mean, the schedule set out in advance. Sunil Gulati in the house at Toyota Park to talk to John Strong on NBC's program. And Gulati addressed the expectations for the U.S. men's national team at the World Cup in Brazil. Now, we have these facts to deal with. Number one, this is the group of death. Yes, because the United States is in it, it helps make it a group of death, but it's still an incredibly tough out for the United States. We're all pointing to that Ghana game. I know there's actually some dissent on whether or not that Ghana game is the crucial game. But, if you go get 3 points out of the Ghana game, you set yourself up. And this team has the talent to do it. I think we're all doubtful because Ghana's beaten them in 2 different World Cups to knock them out, because Ghana presents a significant challenge, because there are issues with the defending the U.S. men's national team. But they have an opportunity here. This is the most talented, deepest team the United States will ever take to a World Cup, and it might not matter, and that's the frustrating thing. So what does Sunil Gulati think, the president of U.S. Soccer? He says, everybody wants to get through the first round. That's our goal. Our World Cup final, as Jurgen has said, our World Cup final is that first game against Ghana. If we start well, there's no reason we can't get through the first round. Then it's a knockout competition. So we get through the first round, and then we dream about more. So this is where the bar has been for the USA. It hasn't gotten any higher. And maybe it's a reflection of the group and the draw, because you didn't know what you were going to have. Expectations before the draw comes out. Okay, you get into the round of 16. Maybe you want to make those quarterfinals. Maybe that's your goal. I have a phone call. Quickly, who's this? You're on the air, or you're not on the air. Maybe you're not on the air. Let me see if I can fix this. Now you're on the air. There you are. What's up?
Hey, what's up? I was gonna see if you wanted to talk the Manchester United sacking of David Moyes.
Well, we've got Luke Moore coming up at 10:30. We're definitely going to go over that. Now, are you? Let me ask you: Are you a United fan?
I am not. I
Okay.
am looking at this with all kinds of Schadenfreude, so to speak.
Because of Moyes or because of United?
Because of United. I mean, if you look at how the Glazers have mismanaged the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I would be terrified of whom they would hire.
Okay.
As a replacement.
Now,
for
the issue for United, and this is what's coming up as people start talking about this. Number one, nothing's official yet. I think all the reports say the board or whoever's making these decisions is meeting, and they're going to ask Moyes to step aside, or they'll sack him. The issue for United is that there are limited options. Now, if they waited and decided to let him go, now, I mean, I suppose you could fire him, have a caretaker, get through the World Cup, and see what's available after that. But the issue is that right now, where are they going to go? I mean, look, as far as I know, Jurgen Klopp's not leaving Dortmund. In fact, I think he made another statement about not leaving Dortmund. Where are you going to go? I mean, you're going to try to pry Simeone out of Atletico Madrid? Is that really what kind of football you want to play at United? There's a lot of issues here.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I think United supporters, and I think United is deluding itself in terms of how desirable they think that job really is.
Oh, it's desirable.
Given the constraints.
It's still desirable. Thanks for the comment. I got to get moving. We're going to talk to Charlie Boehm about MLS, but I think that that job remains one of the most desirable jobs in world football, and it's similar to Notre Dame football. There was that period where Notre Dame football was down. Nobody really paid attention to them. That job is still a big job. They might not be able to draw a big name, but it's still a big draw. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Charlie Boehm, USSoccerPlayers.com, Soccer Wire, MLS Soccer. We'll review the MLS results from the weekend. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV, SoccerMorning.com.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning, joined now via Skype, in all his bearded glory, our friend Charlie Boehm from MLSsoccer.com and Soccer Wire and U.S. Soccer Players, where he covers the game. Charlie, how are you, sir?
Doing great.
Doing great. It was one of those weekends, lots of stuff being thrown all over the place, and I guess our job is to sit here and try to make sense of it all. And this is an MLS chat, and as I'm looking through, I mean, I watched a couple of games. I know you were able to watch a couple of games. Can't watch everything. It's impossible. What's the adage is, if you're watching more than one game at a time, you're watching 0 games. Is that right?
That's how it usually is for me, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start then. I'll start with the hometown team for you, the team that you're closest to, whether you are covering them actively. I know you're out at DC United games all the time, but DC United on their path to, I don't know what the word is, respectability, I suppose, is what they're looking for at this point. They get a 1-1 draw with Columbus. Columbus actually down for most of that game. That seems like, is it wrong of me to say that sort of dropped points for the Crew? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although, given the circumstances of the match itself, they can feel fortunate as well. I mean, the Crew have been an interesting story this season because, like someone compared them to last year's Timbers to me over the weekend. They're kind of a dynamic, enjoyable team that's got a kind of a stylish young coach that's really overseen a dramatic style change and is getting a lot more out of some of the same kind of players. So given that, I was really intrigued to watch them in their entirety this week. And they didn't really produce their best. They struggled a little bit, giving up an early goal and having to deal with a DC United team that sat back a bit. But then at the end, getting a 90th minute equalizer, you have to say it was they're probably happy about the result. Drop points for DC in a sense if you want to try and approach them with higher expectations. So you have to remember DC would have climbed close to the top of the standings in the Eastern Conference if they had held on to that win on Saturday.
This is the Columbus revival, if we're going to call it that, and Greg Verhalter has made a splash there with the Crew is partly based on the way that they're playing, and one of the hallmarks of this is their fullbacks, and you have Josh Williams on one side and Waylon Francis on the other. From what you saw, are there adjustments being made? I mean, look, DC United is a team that you would expect to sit back against a team that possesses the ball better, that knocks the ball around a little bit. But are teams adjusting to Columbus, or is that going to be a longer process over the course of the season? Yes,
I think you're right. Berhalter is going to have to show that he's got a couple other tricks in his bag because they're going to be able to begin to get scouted. We saw, for example, the Impact set the league on fire, and to some extent, FC Dallas did at this time last year with strong early starts. And inevitably, MLS tends to drag down those early front runners, and a lot of that is teams catching up and catching on to what you're doing. So, with those forwards or those fullbacks getting forward for Columbus, it does leave gaps. And honestly, DC should have been up 2-0 long before the late heroics from Will Trapp and Hector Jimenez, because they had a 2v1 chance. They had a couple, counter breaks with odd men advantages that they couldn't finish because, and Berhalter makes no apologies for the fact that he wants everybody to be forward leaning to get into the other team's half. Like you mentioned, the fullbacks getting forward, and that does leave the numbers, in disadvantage at times. So they've got to show, I think, somewhat similar to what we saw with Kansas City the last couple of years, where if you got great ideas, that's outstanding. But now, how many of them do you have, and can you grind as well as fly? If that makes sense. Let
me flip it to DC for a second. From what I saw, and I did not watch this entire game, but from what I saw, there was a flash of the Nick De Leon everybody expects to see. Can he be consistently that dangerous, or is this still an open question as to whether he can be a regular contributor? I mean, like Chris Pontius isn't coming back for a while. They're going to have to rely on guys like De Leon and the newly acquired Chris Rolfe to create those chances. Can he be that guy?
It sure looks like it. And what's interesting is we're seeing De Leon roaming inside a bit more. There's been talk that he would even play a central midfield role at certain times this year, which is a new wrinkle to some extent. I think we're only beginning to scratch the surface of De Leon's potential. The issue is going to be he's had hamstring issues in the past. He's had little knocks and niggles that have interrupted his rhythm over the course of his season so far. So can he stay healthy? Can he handle that weekly grind of training and matches? But I'm impressed because he's shown that he's able to do a lot of different things in the course of the game, and had played some very telling passes, actually drifting inside and trying to thread balls in between defenders and play guys into space. And Fabian Espindola was also a lot of people's man of the match in this game because he showed what he's bringing to United's effort, both in terms of that attacking imagination and movement, but also tracking back, being a real pain for opposing both defenders and attackers, covering a lot of ground. And I think as those guys, and Rolfe included, there's signs that there's some real chemistry if these guys can get an understanding with one another and maybe ping the ball around and be more expansive and possess the ball more. Because right now DC is a little direct, a little bit of sitting deep, a little bit of a preference to the counter, which I think will serve them well on the road. It's a little different story if they need to go out and seize the initiative at home. But De Leon's certainly one to watch. It's a weird parallel to Pontius, as you mentioned, because so much talent. Question now is health and durability.
Very quickly, briefly, is Perry Kitchen underrated?
Absolutely, absolutely. We're not talking about him enough, and that's because he does a role that is maybe inherently unsexy and doesn't always draw the eye. You have to sort of explicitly, seek out those looks and watch what he does, because he's like a good waiter. He's often unnoticed, but that's the joy of what he brings.
Very nice, very nice. Let's move on to other MLS results of note. Sporting Kansas City 4, Montreal stands out. If you just look at the scores, you sort of scan them. I know there was an own goal. Dom Dwyer got 2. This was the best team in the East. I mean, is there anybody better than Sporting in the East right now versus what looks to be the worst team in the East? And you mentioned this before we came on the air, and I haven't heard it. Frank Klopas in danger of losing his job already?
Well, I don't know that's. I wouldn't say that yet. Certainly, there are signs that the pressure is cranking up, is ratcheting up in Montreal. He didn't speak to the media before the game on Friday. He apparently didn't speak to the media after the 4-0 loss to KC, which is, obviously as journalists, we tend to be annoyed by these things and call coaches out, because that makes our job harder, and it suggests. It doesn't put him in a good light. I'll just say that. But I think he's. I don't know. There's a lack of transparency maybe in the decision-making processes up in Montreal. Although a cynic would say it all comes down to Joey Saputo's whims, but their structure and that European-style structure means that Klopas may or may not be seen as the one, with a long-term vision and a long-term mission. So I think he's been put in a tough position, one that he, of course, took on willingly. But right now, it just doesn't look like they have the horses. I think they'll have to make some moves in the summer window if they're going to salvage this season.
Sporting Kansas City again. Are they the best team in the East? I mean, I'm not sure why there would be much of an argument at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the belt, and someone's got to prove it by performing better week in, week out, and getting a going in and getting a result off of them. I think it's just another sign too that venue can become a really hostile, really difficult place, because not only the home field advantage of the atmospherics, but also the way they play. That press, that constant frenetic pressure, the way they can regulate the tempo of matches is a real challenge, not only physically but intellectually and sort of tactically for opposing teams and coaches. So that's a tough spot, and I think it won the Grant Wall's poll for toughest venue. I could be remembering that incorrectly, but there's a number of factors that go into why KC is so good, especially at home.
Colorado, San Jose 0-0, Philadelphia, Houston 0-0, 2 goals in total between Chicago and New England. We already talked about Columbus and DC. And the RSL beats Portland by a goal. Are things getting cagier? Is defending getting better? Are teams having issues in attack? Is there a big conclusion to be made about the low number of goals across those games?
A lot of teams cancel each other out this week, and I think too. I was troubled by, and we saw a lot of cards.
Yes. I
think we should have seen actually more cards and more reds. Even I think there were 6 on Saturday, and there could have been several more. There's the risk with MLS is always that the athleticism is going to bog down the quality of play, and that some of the tackles. I mean, I saw some really horrific tackles, and some of them were justly punished, and some weren't. So there's some of that going on, and I think there's also just a little bit of that early season caginess. Teams are a little bit more content to take a point and keep building, keep working on what they're doing, because teams aren't the finished product by and large. Let's say at least a plurality of teams feel like they can go back to work during the week and improve, and so you're not seeing maybe this team's taking quite the same risks. And of course, attacking sharpness isn't always there at this stage in the season. I hope that we're not already seeing, the physical wear and tear setting in.
No,
but
not.
Certainly there was a shortage of attractive soccer around the league.
I looked at the Vancouver LA game. I looked in on that game a couple of times. What struck me is LA scored a couple of goals and they've got something clicking, but their defending is still a question. And I know. You have Leonardo making a mistake that Pinedo, I think, doubled up on that leads to a goal. But to lose the lead twice the way that LA did, I don't know. Is there trouble there? Is that on the road in Vancouver in an odd situation with the turf and everything else? Is that a game that they can kind of stomach a point from?
I suppose in the big picture, but Omar Gonzalez said, we trained on turf. We knew what we were in for. and you have the lead. So the LA Galaxy, we know from past years that is a consistent trophy contender, doesn't allow that to happen. I think Taylor Twellman made an interesting point on Twitter in the latter stages of that match, that the central defensive pairing, that won championships was Omar Gonzalez and AJ De La Garza. Mm-hmm. Bruce Arena has seen fit to move De La Garza out wide. He is maybe the most versatile defender in the league. It seems like he can play anywhere, and bring Leonardo in. I know he likes Leonardo's size, and he likes to have that those traditionally commanding center backs. But that partnership with De La Garza and Gonzalez was something special. And Twellman rightly pointed out, I think, that he may second guess breaking up that partnership because there was real chemistry there. Well, so that's something to watch certainly as well.
Yeah, and he may have an opportunity to put them back together if he decides to if Donovan comes back from injury and he decides to put Donovan back in his usual spot, and then he relies on Dan Gargan the way that he has so far, because I think that's the surprise is how Gargan's been in that team. And it gives Bruce some flexibility there. So we'll certainly watch that. A couple minutes left here. I guess I have to do this. It's sort of required now. Portland Timbers, they lose to RSL on the road. I get that. That's not a game that you expect them to go and win. But the panic and we haven't won a game, this is starting to become its own sort of weight that's going to be pressing down on them for the foreseeable future.
This is the other swing of the pendulum when you have a fanatical fan base, and you have such a pride of place within your local market. You have such high expectations after a fantastic year. When things don't go right, the lows are lower. I thought, I didn't get to watch all 90 of that, but I watched a good chunk of the second half. And what I saw was the Timbers I expected. Their finishing let them down. And, of course, Nick Rimando. Nick Rimando was obscenely good in that match. And he had a couple of legitimate goal-stealing saves that I think you have to give Portland a little credit for carving open a really good RSL team at home. And I thought they deserved to be up 1 or 2-0 before they gave up that relatively late winner. So, yes, it's a results-based business, but I think Caleb Porter's got to be, and I know that everything I'm hearing and seeing from out of that camp is that there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of angst. But I have seen an improvement in the performances. So he'll rest his hat on that for now and just look for the next result. But they need 3 points.
Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way, or sometimes you go up against a brick wall named Nick Rimando. I get that, and I suppose you can sort of, in context, appreciate what happened to the Timbers this weekend. But again, the fact that you look at the table, and the only team below them is the Quakes, who haven't won a game and have played 2 less games than the Timbers. That it starts to become its own thing, regardless of whether you play well enough to win or not, because you didn't. You flat out didn't. It's tough.
Yeah, you make a good point there. But if you're committed to this coach and this style over the long haul, which all signs point to yes, you have to try and maybe there's a finishing issue there. Because, we never thought they'd be missing Ryan Johnson, right? Because Ryan Johnson was often maligned during his time there in Portland. But maybe they need a little bit of a different type of presence up top, maybe more of a traditional number 9. Yeah. I don't know. If the goals start flowing next week, then this conversation will change dramatically. So we'll have to see. But it's up to them to find the net, period.
Porter raised the level of difficulty by letting Johnson walk and deciding to go with this sort of small lineup that he goes with, and it's not really paying off yet. We'll see if it does. Last question here, and James has a good point on Twitter. The refereeing, you mentioned the red cards, specifically Philadelphia and Houston, which is a game I know you pay close attention to, and then Chicago, New England. There were some questionable decisions. Are we in a position right now where we should be moaning about the overall quality of MLS refereeing on a different level than we usually do?
Just because you see cards and flashpoints doesn't necessarily mean the refs had a bad game. I would certainly say that I believe it was Guzman or Villarreal. I forget which one was running the show in Columbus. That was a really tough game for a ref. The clear dog, so red card was overlooked. A lot of tetchy, angry sort of stuff that really built up. The referee's command of the match wasn't clear. I thought the referee's command of the match in Philadelphia and Houston was a little uncertain too. Just so there was a late second yellow for time wasting on a throw-in for Kofi Sarkodie. That was sort of, it was confusing, and it's one thing to make your decisions, but the way a referee manages the match and his bearing says a lot to me about his overall preparedness for those big pro matches, and there definitely were some issues. But I think at least we can see with pro. And what was most frustrating also is that in Columbus they refused to take pool questions from the reporters based on a technicality that was apparently invalid. So when you don't have enough confidence to even handle basic questions about your decision making in the flow of the game, that's disconcerting as well. So certainly there were some rough days for refs over the weekend, but I think pro has a process to manage that. They don't necessarily give us the satisfaction of publicly castigating or exposing their referees, but it's happening behind closed doors. So we'll see how it goes next week, but it's certainly something to be aware of. There's a lot of room for improvement. We'll say that after this weekend.
Charlie Bone from Soccer Wire, MLSsoccer.com, and U.S. Soccer Players. We didn't even get a chance to talk about Obafemi Martins getting on the score sheet and Seattle taking care of Chivas, which wasn't unexpected, but I do think that little element, Martin's getting a goal and Dempsey setting him up, that bodes very, very well for the Sounders. We'll have a chance.
Maybe the prettiest goal of the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your time, Charlie. I appreciate it. Well, as always, man.
Always a joy. Have a good one, Jason.
There we go. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll grab Luke Moore from the Football Ramble. We'll talk the Premier League. Lots of talking points there as well. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Like a Soccer Morning, joined now by Skype, his first video appearance on the program. So if you watch the YouTube show, you get to see his face, the world famous Luke Moore. Well, Luke Moore from the world famous Football Ramble. I suppose you're world famous by extension then, Luke.
I'm not sure it's a selling point to say to your listeners and viewers that you actually get to see my face, but they're still very kind of you. Thanks.
Oh, come on, that is the effort involved in that beard. That makes a difference.
This is a one-time only thing. I'm at the in-laws for the weekend for Easter, so you get to see me on the internet instead of just hearing me.
There you go. So and look, clear as a bell through Skype. All right, Luke, this is one of those weekends where there's plenty to talk about, and yet it's the news that's breaking this morning. Well, this morning for me, this afternoon for you, that David Moyes is likely out at United. I don't know that it's a shock necessarily, but again, it's going to bring up all of these questions over what United is what they are now versus what they were before, and who actually could step into that job.
Yeah, I mean, it's been reported over here. I'm not sure how it's been reported where you are, but it's been reported over here by a couple of quality newspapers that he is indeed on his way. It looks to me like it's been briefed by United and then embargoed, and because everyone seems to be reporting it at the same time. So
interesting.
I'm also looking at the betting markets, which tend to be a pretty good indication of what's happening. It does look to be, true in what's happening. So it will be interesting to see how they get on in a post-Moyes environment. I suppose if they were going to let him go, it makes sense to do so now because it gives them a whole summer and a whole a big amount of time to prepare for what they want to do next season.
Okay, but they still have matches left, Luke. I mean, is he going to play out the string as we like to say over here? I don't understand how this is going to work. Are they going to put gigs in the skulls in the job until I don't know what's going to happen now?
Well, I suppose that, I mean, if we assume that it is actually going to happen, then we assume that a coach that's around in the club already is going to take them through the last 4 games.
Right.
And I suppose with a view to trying to get them into the Europa League. As it stands, we don't know what's happening with the cups and everything yet, but they're in 7th. They're 6 points behind Tottenham in 6th, and 12 points behind Everton in 5th. So they want to finish as strongly as they can. They've got winnable games between now and the end of the season. It's feasible they could win all their games between now and the end of the season. They've got 3 home games against Norwich, Sunderland and Hull City, and the last day of the season they're away at Southampton, who will have nothing to play for. So it's feasible they could win all those games between now and the end of the season with Moyes or without him. But the worrying thing for them yesterday when they lost to Everton was not that they lost to Everton because Everton are a good team. It was that Everton didn't even really need to be at their best to beat them. And if you're a Man United fan or maybe someone who's making decisions at the club, you think, well, come on, that's not good enough. And that leads me on to how some of the players have performed. Now, I suppose if the players are playing for a manager who's out of his depth and can't really do the business at that level, then fair enough. We don't know that is the case, but I would assume that the players are as professional as they come playing at Manchester United, and they should really be performing better than they have done.
The double whammy of news as well, I believe this broke yesterday, that Danny Welbeck may be looking to make a move. Some frustration over his time at United. Does Moyes leaving change anything for Danny Welbeck? And is that where does Welbeck fit into what United's future might be?
Well, it's always an interesting time for a player when a new manager comes in, isn't it? Because you never know if the manager's going to fancy you, whether he wants to play you or not. And obviously, Welbeck's been in and out of the side through, I don't know, no real fault of his own, I suppose. No. He's always seemed to acquit himself pretty well when I've seen him. But you've got to look at it in the context of the Moyes regime so far. I mean, he's not played the same 11, I don't think, in any of his games. So he made 6 changes going into the Everton game, which just seems bizarre given they've got nothing else to play for. They had a couple of good wins. They were playing okay. I don't think they had any injury problems worthy of talking about. And he's made so many changes that they can't seem to get any fluidity or consistency going. And so I suppose someone like Danny Welbeck, who's got ambitions to play for England consistently and to perform at the highest level, is probably frustrated. But I mean, Welbeck doesn't really. It's difficult for a striker in his position because Welbeck doesn't score that many goals, so he can't rely on that. He can't look back on that and say, "Well, listen, I always score goals wherever I play," because that's not the case. So maybe he's not making as big a claim for a starting place as he thinks he is. And barring 1 or 2 players, not really. Man United players haven't really nailed down first team places consistently anyway under Moyes because he's just chops and changes so much.
It seems like he's constantly throwing things up against the wall and hoping something sticks. But then what does stick actually gets pulled back off the wall on occasion. And that's a very difficult way to go about this. This future of United and who steps in. I mean, let's caretaker manager till the end of the season, get through that, hopefully make the Europa League, have the summer to find somebody. Who are they going to find?
I mean, there's no shortage of managers out there who would like that challenge, is there? I mean, it's biggest, along with Liverpool, they're the biggest club in England. Their, current revenues and all that sort of status are, 2013, 14. They're one of the biggest clubs in the world. So they're not going to have a shortage of takers. They've obviously got to find the right manager for the job, and I get the impression they ideally would like, ironically, given they're about to fire their manager, I think ideally they would like a long-term solution. So I don't know. I've got no insight into who they're approaching and who they want to go after, if indeed they are firing Moyes. But there's not going to be a shortage of takers. They'll have their pick of the
Sure, maybe they should just raid Everton again and grab Martinez. I mean, I don't
you never know, do you? I think I said this to you when we first started talking at the beginning of the season. I think we said it's much easier to be the person that follows Ferguson.
Yes, absolutely.
So they'll find it easy to find a good manager, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that means he was always predestined that Moyes would fail, because certainly there are elements of him personally and his approach to this job and the choices he's made that have ended with this. But at the same time, it was always going to be so difficult. And again, maybe he had the choice to turn it down, and maybe he should have. But do you ever want to be? How much regret would you have if you're on your deathbed and you passed up the Manchester United job? And that's the difficulty he faced.
Yeah, an ambitious person who's operating at a professional level in football is not going to turn that job down. I don't think you can blame him for 1 second for taking the job. No. I think at the club they anticipated a bit of a rocky patch. They probably didn't realistically expect it to continue as is, because that team was coming to the end of its cycle anyway, and obviously no one can really replace Alex Ferguson, I wouldn't have thought. But I just don't think they thought it would be this bad, and I don't think they thought the performances would be this bad, and I think they would rather nip it in the bud than give a guy who they're now no longer sure about 150, 200 million pounds to spend in the summer, given that he's not really ever spent that sort of money in his career as a manager. And it's a different ballpark now. It's a different era to when Ferguson took over. The money being chucked around is absolutely massive now. And maybe they just think, you know what, we made a mistake. We need to get an established, well-respected manager who's been here and done it before and won things and can be trusted with the checkbook. Because don't forget, they've had a new chief exec coming as well, who's supposedly helping Moyes with the transfers. And their performance in the transfer market has been as bad as their performances on the pitch. They've sort of flirted around with players, not really been consistent or solid in their approaches, and not really got the targets they wanted.
Absolutely, and yeah, Fellaini has not worked out, and that's sort of that's the symbol of the failures in the transfer market that Manchester United has had, because he seemed to be sort of a panic buy at the end of the window last year, and Manchester United fans are ready to chuck him out the window. That's a lot of words for a 7th place team, but that's who Manchester United is right now.
that's a dig.
Wow. I have no particular love or hatred for Manchester United. I'm just saying, and what I mean though is they are a massive club, as you said. To have anybody, the possibility someone would turn that job down if offered, except for a few very unique situations where they either have a better offer or they are loyal to a fault to their current situation. And I'm thinking Klopp here, because I don't imagine he's going to move. That's the case with Manchester United. They're so big that they cast a shadow even from 7th place. Moving up the table, though, the shock result of the weekend, Chelsea getting beaten at home by Sunderland. First, penalty, no penalty for you, Luke?
I thought it was a penalty.
Okay.
I thought it was a penalty, and I thought that it was craziness from Azpilicueta to go to ground in that situation. No disrespect to Josie Altidore, but he's not banged in 50 goals this season. He's hurtling towards the touchline at some pace. You'd argue whether he's really going to cause any damage from that position. Sure. And it seemed to me that Azpilicueta went to ground to try and win the ball back because he was trying to make amends for what had just happened. And it's just a basic error. I mean, shouldn't be going to ground in that situation. And as soon as you go to ground like that and there's contact, which there was, the referee's he's likely to give a penalty, and that can be the difference. And Chelsea weren't good enough. Sunderland showed a bit against Man City. They're very unlucky not to win that game. They're starting to come out fighting. It might be too late for them. We're not sure yet, but they, you can't blame a refereeing decision, which was probably correct, for the fact that they've not done the business again. And Chelsea have lost 3 of their last 6 games in the league at this time of the season. If you look at why the title is probably going to go to Liverpool, it's because in the last few weeks, City have won, I think, 2 of their last 5. Chelsea have only won 3 of their last 6 and lost the other 3. And Liverpool have won 11 in a row now. That's going to be the difference. And Chelsea haven't been good enough, because I think they thought they could just beat Sunderland at home. Mourinho's record at home in the league is so good, they just thought, well, this is done and dusted, we'll get this done.
They've had
Sunderland were at it.
Yeah, Sunderland came to play. Chelsea did not. Chelsea's had close calls this season at Stamford Bridge. I mean, I believe it was West Brom that I can't remember the sequence, but it took some doing for them to maintain the unbeaten record at home under Mourinho, and that's obviously that's the headline, that this was 78 games unbeaten at home at Stamford Bridge for Mourinho. His quotes after the game, his press conference after the game, I suppose he went full on sarcasm here. I want to congratulate Mike Dean. His performance was unbelievable. So fantastic performance. He came here with one objective to make a fantastic performance. He's already faced fines this season. Can the FA can he be fined for this? Can he be charged for this insanely sarcastic approach to the refereeing performance?
I think Mourinho's been very, very becoming very close to going from the man that people love to hate to the man that people just hate. and he needs to. Of course, he's got a big tactic of trying to deflect blame away from his players. He did it in the game at Villa Park against Aston Villa when Ramirez put that horror challenge in and Mourinho took all the heat and got sent to the stands himself. He might still be on the suspended punishment from that, actually. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Premier League and the FA post that game. He's a bit of a moaner because he likes to take deflect the blame away from his players, which is, you can understand why he does that. But it just, I mean, I don't know. He's so well revered at Chelsea and so well liked that I'm sure that fans of the club forgive him for most things. That's not going to happen forever. You know, if he goes another season, I mean, they might not win anything this season. Of course, they're still in the Champions League, so anything could happen there. They're probably not going to win the league this season. So if they go another season without winning anything, how long does Mourinho's gloss sort of remain? It'd be interesting to see what happens. But they didn't lose that game because Mark didn't give a penalty, which was probably a penalty. They lost that game for a number of different reasons, and most chiefly because they didn't match Sunderland, and because you've got players like Ramirez who he's not performing now. He's turned into a bit of a hatchet man. I mean, you see him put that elbow on Sebastian Larsson. He's just turned into a thug. He used to be a really good midfield player, hustle and bustle, box to box, could sort of do it all. Just seems to be preoccupied with just kicking people and giving fouls away now. And then in a way that's indicative of what Chelsea have done recently. Not performed when they need to perform. You can't lose 50% of your Premier League games in the run-in. You just can't do that. And if you want to compete and you want to win something, it won't happen. And Mourinho can blame everyone he likes for that, but ultimately the blame will fall upon himself and his players.
It was interesting. We've talked about this before, Luke. The sort of, he sets his team up as not a title contender, and perhaps that's more deflection and a way to keep the pressure off of his team as they go for a title, and he knows they're certainly in it. Then it's sort of a whining and moaning campaign when it's quote unquote taken away from them. And yes, not good enough. I mean, simply not good enough. Maybe he knew something. Maybe he knew they were going to drop these points back when he said they weren't title contenders, Luke. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Can he tell the future as well? We're so tired of his act, I suppose. But at the same time, it remains effective enough that you kind of let him get away with it on occasion. I don't know.
I think maybe it might be a situation where he's not happy with a large part of his team and he wants to moan, but he won't moan about his own players. So he just moans about everything else. That could be the case. I mean, it's frustrating from a Chelsea fan's point of view because if I put myself in the position of a Chelsea fan, I'd probably be gearing up for the game at Anfield on Sunday thinking, well, it all rests on that game. But because they've let themselves down, it doesn't rest on that game now. It doesn't really matter. I mean, Chelsea could win that game feasibly and still not win the league. Liverpool don't have to win it anymore. Liverpool could draw that and still crack on. So it's disappointing for them from that point of view. They've also not really scored enough goals. I mean, the thing that's separated them apart from Liverpool and City is just the amount of goals. I think Chelsea have only got... I don't think Chelsea have got anywhere near what City and Liverpool have got. Of course, they haven't conceded many either. But as we've spoken about week after week when we've chatted, if you score that many goals, the amount of goals Liverpool score, you'll get yourself out of jail. You know, and if Chelsea had more goals in their locker, would they have lost 1-0 to Villa? Would they have lost 1-0 to Palace? Right. Would they have lost 2-1 to Sunderland? The three key results in their running? Probably not. So it's going to come down to that at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's 29 less goals, Liverpool, Chelsea. Fewer goals, for Chelsea compared to Liverpool. Yeah. Liverpool did it again. They scored enough goals despite shipping some this weekend against Norwich. And okay, so maybe you expect to give up 2 to City and you score 3. That's a brilliant performance. Maybe you don't expect to do the same against Norwich, but it doesn't matter because they score enough. They score more than enough.
Yeah, the coverage of Norwich over the last few days has been crazy because everyone seems to be treating them as this plucky Norwich. Oh, can they stay up? Look at this hard running they've got. And they were treated in the game against Liverpool as some sort of lucky FA Cup third round team who could potentially get past Liverpool, or match them for the second half of the game. Norwich spent a lot of money in the summer. A lot of those players are underperforming for the transfer fee that was paid for them. They either weren't good enough in the first place, or they're not playing anywhere near the potential. The amount of money they spent compared to a lot of other clubs in that division has been pretty scandalous, really. But they did play okay in the second half. They matched Liverpool here and there. They showed a lot of fight. Liverpool seem able to weather any storm, and the way they weather a storm is just by scoring goals all the time. As I said to you before, they win every type of game. They not only seem able to overcome any challenge, they just seem to relish it. They love it. And when you've won 11 games in a row, it really does speak for itself. I mean, it was looking like it's between them and City, and they've put 9 points on City now. City have got 2 games in hand, but Liverpool are 9 points ahead of them. Such a strong position to be in. And the way they're approaching games and the way they seem to be so mentally robust, you wouldn't You wouldn't bet against them. I mean, you'd be crazy to bet against them. The hardest game they've got now, I think they'll beat Chelsea at Anfield. I think they're just so good at home, they'll beat Chelsea at Anfield. Hardest game they've got now is Palace away. Palace are in great form. They've won 5 in a row. They're good at home. They don't concede many. That'll be tough for them. But I think they'll beat Chelsea.
I imagine there'll be a moment or two of controversy in that game because top of the table clashes this season have brought some of that, and it's
yeah. But how's Mourinho going to set up against Liverpool? I mean, this season he's been keen to set up a way to the better teams in the division to just really frustrate and take a 0-0. He knows he can't do that now, and if he has to open up and attack Liverpool will tear them to pieces. They've got Chelsea haven't really got that much pace in the centre-back area or in the middle of the park. And they've got big, strong players, but they haven't got pace. And Liverpool have got so much pace. If Chelsea come out at them at Anfield, they'll get destroyed. They really will. And Mourinho's going to have to hope to close it up as much as he can and maybe just try and nick a goal. But I mean, that's so much easier said than done.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's pick your poison. It's come at them because you need the win. And absolutely open yourself up against the best counterattacking team in England. Or
Liverpool trade. They'll trade with anyone. The amount of confidence they've got and the players they've got and the goals in their team, they'll trade with any team in Europe. They will trade with them. And they know they'll concede, but they'll know they'll score as well. And Chelsea, essentially, because they don't score anywhere near enough goals, they need to really keep a clean sheet against Liverpool at Anfield. And that's as next to impossible as you can get in English football at the moment.
Absolutely. Looking at these other results, at Manchester City today against West Brom, they are, as you said, 9 points back with 2 games in hand. So there is no way to catch Liverpool if Liverpool win out. But they're still in. They're still in with a shout here. Is City? Are they ripe? I mean, look, you don't expect them to lose at home to West Brom, but are they ripe for their own sort of stumble, and then we can begin the coronation for Liverpool?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? Because you make predictions at this time of the season, you do tend to get made to look a bit silly. I mean, I just said I think Liverpool win at Anfield against Chelsea. I think they will. I said they'd beat Man City at home, so I'll stick with that for the Chelsea game. Man City, they already are having a bit of a wobble. They've only won 1 in 4. They lost to Liverpool, obviously. They had a really convincing result against Southampton, but they drew against Arsenal and they drew against Sunderland. I wouldn't expect them to stumble against West Brom tonight, but West Brom's best form has been away from home. And West Brom are highly motivated as well. A few players for City aren't performing at their top level at a key time in the season. And let's be honest, let's be real here. Man City should be winning this league. I mean, they've got by far the best squad. For whatever reason, they don't seem to be clicking. They can't sort their away form out. They haven't been able to all season. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they could slip up here. They seem to have a few concentration issues as well here and there. So it'll be interesting to see how it manifests itself. They need to win those 2 games in hand. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, that really does go without saying. But it's not in their hands anymore, is it? And once it's not in your hands, maybe sometimes you can throw the shackles off and say, look, let's just win our games if we can. But they've still got to go to Goodison Park anyway. They've also got to go to Sellers Park next week. So, I mean, they've got 2 really tough away games after this game anyway. And that's probably reflected. That's probably why Liverpool are such short price favourites in the betting and stuff like that, because City have got 2 tough games after this one. They're going into a game at Sellers Park against Palace, who, as I've just said, have won 5 on the bounce. And then they go to Goodison Park, and Everton are very strong at home.
You look at City. Okay, they have a title. They managed to climb that mountain and win that title, but it still seems like there's something fundamentally flawed. If you are going and you're spending all of this money, and I know it reinforces the notion, Luke, that you can't just throw money at the problem and solve everything, but Champions League has been underwhelming. They're obviously, they should be winning the league this season, and they've slipped up enough, and they had that terrible run to start the season away from home that sort of submarined their whole campaign. And look, it's been Mancini, and now it's Pellegrini. What's the issue at the Etihad that causes this sort of thing?
It's interesting in terms of a more broad look at football in general. When it comes to winning things, and Alex Ferguson talks about it in quite an interesting way in his not the autobiography he's just put out, but the one before that, where he says that there's a natural, almost subconscious inertia when you win something big. And so even though you try and get right at it, so right, we need to defend the title now, it's always much harder. And I'll tell you a great example of how that manifests itself is in the Champions League. So no team has defended the Champions League successfully since Milan in 1990. They won it in 89 and 90 under Arrigo Sacchi. And it may well be just because it's difficult to raise yourself again to repeat the feat. Now, of course, Man City didn't repeat the feat last season, and they fired their manager and got a new manager in who has got his own ideas. And okay, sometimes, as is the case with Roberto Martinez, players take on these new ideas very quickly. They don't always. City probably needed to bring one, maybe two top-class centre-backs in. They were unlucky with Nastasic, but they brought in Di Michaelis, who for me isn't good enough and struggles in a league where the pace is so high, as is the Premier League. Of course, he's a very experienced defender, and he's sort of excelled himself in the Bundesliga and stuff like that. But he's struggled this season in the Premier League against pace, especially. And I think they maybe got a little bit. It's odd because Touré has been good this season. He scored a lot of goals, but I still think there's a question mark over him consistency-wise. Joe Hart's not been consistent this season either. Of course, the goalkeeper is massively important. Unless you're Liverpool, you score goals for fun. And City's goal-scoring rate has dropped off in the second half of the season. So it's probably a combination of factors. But let's be fair. I mean, Liverpool won 11 games in a row. Sure. They kept in touch with the big teams at the top, and then just blitzed them with 11 games in a row. And if they win 14 in a row, then what can you do? There's nothing you can do about that.
Very true. And City sort of brings up these other larger issues for me of what the club's character actually is. Now, look, I'm American. I'm not English. I don't live and breathe it from a local perspective. But you look at what United's going through after 25 years with the same manager and him sort of being the dominant force there, and they change leadership, and that changes everything. City is a new project, lots of money, and there's history there, but certainly not this kind of history. And they're still struggling to find the one guy who can sort of be the overarching influence. They can call it the City way. They can talk about a certain style that they're teaching in their academy, but that doesn't translate all the way up to the top necessarily, especially when you're trying to go and win things. Yeah,
I mean, if you want to become a sort of a dominant, almost dynastic type of team, then in those terms, City are still a very young side. I mean, the investment that came in a few years ago has not been there for an awful long time.
Sure.
So it may take a while. They may go on and win 3 titles in a row after this. Pellegrini may think, right, well, I found my feet now. I'm up and running. Then he may get a couple. Well, they'll probably sign players in the summer that will improve them again, and they may go on and do it. It'll be difficult for Liverpool. If Liverpool win it this season, it'll be very difficult for them to defend it because they'll have the Champions League next season. They've got a few signings that they've brought into the club that haven't performed. They either need to improve them or they need to replace them. So it will be open for City to do it. Obviously, there's great uncertainty at United. Mourinho seems like he's a powder keg waiting to explode. City just haven't been consistent enough this season. I mean, if you look at what hallmarked the first half of their season, it was just goals, ridiculous home form. Then they just wobbled. And if you look in February, I think they scored 3 league goals in total in February. Had a huge wobble then. They're having another little mini wobble now. It's the consistency. And as I've just said earlier, some of the players just haven't performed at a consistent level.
It's interesting to watch this being built in a modern context because, again, it's such a new project. And you mentioned Pellegrini getting his feet. That presumes that there's going to be a lot of patience with City. And maybe there will be now after what happened with Mancini. Maybe they will have some patience.
The Mancini thing is interesting because Mancini's management career has sort of been known for being good domestically, but not being able to make an impression on European football. Now, City needed to break the back of that Premier League first title win, which they did. And again, Mancini underperformed in Europe as he did at Inter. And I suppose they thought, well, we want to find someone who can compete in Europe as well. And they went for Pellegrini, rightly or wrongly, time will tell. But that was the rationale behind that decision, and I'm not necessarily saying that was the wrong decision.
Right. No,
there are still question marks over whether Pellegrini is a truly top level manager. I mean, he's not got a cabinet full of trophies.
Absolutely. It's interesting with Liverpool sort of coming back up into the mix here, and City now the new addition. Whether or not there will be and whatever recovery United is capable of, whether or not there will be sort of a big five. And how that will dictate. And Arsenal is Arsenal, and they tend to fall off at some point. But there remains this sort of stratification, whether or not all these teams can be consistently good enough. If United is consistently not where they were, or City can't figure it out to win titles, or Liverpool is now back for a long stretch, it makes for a more fascinating league. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the thing Liverpool have got on their side, as well as the size of their club and the history. So they'll find it probably quite easy to attract players if they become champions and they start off in the Champions League group stage, which they will. They'll find it a lot easier. And the other thing they've got key to their future success is they've got Brendan Rodgers as a manager who has clearly got an identity. It's not difficult to understand what a Liverpool team is all about and what Rodgers is all about as a manager. And if you take that, I mean, when at the beginning of the season, I suppose Liverpool and a team like Tottenham had the same sort of ambitions. Spurs seemed to go with Andre Villas-Boas and the mentality and what he represented, but they lost their nerve, rightly or wrongly, and he's gone, and now they've got no identity at all. So it's easy to see Liverpool laying the foundations here to actually truly awaken as a giant of English football again, because they've got the history, they've got the size of club, they've got the finances, and now they've got potentially a title win under their belt, which could see them really kick on. But like I said earlier, it will be tough because there's this natural inertia that Alex Ferguson talks about, which I subscribe to as a theory, that it's very difficult to carry on and kick on and defend. And the very greatest teams are typified by that.
Absolutely. And I think that all stems from the top. I think that stems from your leadership. And I think Brendan Rodgers seems to have the mentality that would give Liverpool every chance, if they get this one, every chance to repeat next season. Yeah,
there's the psychology of it as well. I mean, I'm really interested to see the psychologist that they brought in, Dr. Steve Peters, I think his name is, who worked with Steven Gerrard initially, and now I think, as far as I understand it, works with the whole team. And I actually sat in on the 5 Live over here debate a number of years ago about sports psychology and how the top golfers and the top tennis players on the tour wouldn't dream of going into a big game without having a personal psychologist. And the guy on the line was saying that football is just light years behind that.
Right.
It's seen as something that's not really used that consistently. I don't know whether it's seen as mentally weak or something, or people don't really subscribe to it. And it seems to be working wonders for Liverpool at the moment.
Yeah, they're changing things up there. It could be a very good year for FSG, their owners, Red Sox World Series champions.
Absolutely. What's their reputation like over in the US then?
Oh, they 86 years without a title for the Red Sox. They were the owners that made that happen, made the title happen in 2004. So they have a brilliant reputation with Red Sox fans. They've been an up and down the last couple of years, but they just won a World Series. Can't really fault that. That's 3 in less than a decade for them. That's pretty good.
Right. Okay. Right.
Absolutely. Luke Moore from the Football Ramble joining us as he does weekly to talk about the Premier League. Fascinating stuff. Appreciate your time as always, Luke. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, guys. See you soon.
Let's take a break. When we come back, New York City FC is making an announcement. I don't know what it is. Oh, wait, I do. They're going to play at Yankee Stadium. Hate that. Be right back. Soccer Morning, North America's Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning on a Monday. Fun time edition of the show. Every show is fun time edition. Oh, cancel that. Get rid of that. Drop that music out. Thank you to Alex DeYoung for the musical selections today. Good stuff. Fantastic. New York City FC currently holding a live press conference available on YouTube. Don't watch that. Listen to us, but you'll get all the information. You know what this is. They are announcing Yankee Stadium as the venue. It was first reported. Okay, it's been rumored for a long time, but it was first concretely reported by Andrew Dawson, those guys at the New York Times. Now here's confirmation. Mariano Rivera is in attendance. That's the big news for me. Mo's there. And as much as I am not a Yankees guy, I won't say hate. I'll hold back on the hate. As much as I am not a Yankees guy, the one Yankee I will always love and respect is Mariano Rivera, and he's a big soccer guy. Obviously, Panamanian. Fantastic. This is what New York City FC should do. They should hire Mariano Rivera as their soccer ambassador. He's already got the celebrity. He's already known around the country. He's already known across New York City. He is famous for being the best reliever in the history of baseball. Sign him up as a soccer ambassador. You can't do better than that, right? Season ticket deposits being started at 1:00 Eastern today. Is that what you're telling me right there? I'm trying to translate this information. Okay, season tickets at 1 is what I'm being told. New York City, and this is from Pernetti there at the press conference. New York City FC saying that Yankee Stadium is the most accessible venue in the city. And not being a New York guy, I defer to people. Trevor Hayward says that that's the case. I certainly believe him. And that is a major reason that this decision makes a lot of sense. I hate soccer in a baseball stadium. I hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it. It's terrible. It's not what that stadium was designed for. You have giant gaps. You have to cover up the infield with grass. It's terrible. But considering what they're dealing with in New York, and considering that this team has already been handed to Sheikh Mansour and Manchester City in partnership with the New York Yankees, this is the best of a bad situation. Now, again, the argument is go back to the beginning. Go back before you sold the franchise to Mansour and City and the Yankees for $100 million. And don't do it because there's no stadium plan. We tried it, Flushing Meadows, didn't work out. But I know that the logic then, and it's still the logic now, despite the fact they're going to play in Yankee Stadium for a couple of years, at least 3, probably, maybe, possibly more. The logic is with a team that exists, driving a fan base, getting people in there, and their people will show up. All you New York City FC doubters out there, and I know there's a lot of you, people will show up. How many, we don't know yet. But having a team and having a fan base and having people fronting that organization will push forward the effort to get a stadium built within the city of New York. And from what I've read, new mayor Bill de Blasio has at least opened up the window a little bit. He's opened up some cracks. Now, he has said there will be no public subsidies for whatever situation is determined to be best for New York City FC and the city of New York. Zero public subsidies. And I think that was clear from the moment he was running for mayor. He got elected, and now it's a reality. And let's be fair about this. When you're Sheikh Mansour and you have, how much is the guy worth? If I put a B on this, is that wrong? If you have $1 billion, you shouldn't need public subsidies. Now, that's not the whole story. De Blasio can be adamant about no public subsidies. They can work out a deal with this team that doesn't involve tax breaks or anything like that. But they're still going to need the city's help. They're still going to need the city's help to grease some skids, to get all the permits and everything else. The site that they've identified right next to Yankee Stadium, there's an issue, with an on-ramp and an elevator factory or an elevator parts factory or something like that. Can Mansour and Manchester City make an offer to this elevator parts factory, which apparently is very successful and employs many people? Can they make them an offer to help relocate them that does right by the company, that is fair? Because that's going to be, if that's the site, then that's probably what's going to be key here. You got to buy up the land. You got to pay fair value. That's the issue. That's the problem that they face there. Rick with a dig. In a very real sense, all of Mansour's money is a public subsidy. Okay. All right. I don't want to really get into that. Phone lines are open, 347-756-6276. Thank you to Charlie Boehm and certainly to Luke Moore for their chats with us today. Weekend happenings, MLS and Premier League. Lots going on in those two parts of the world. Excuse me. MLS getting more and more interesting. Again, not a lot of goals through some of these games. Sporting Kansas City dropping 4. Somebody asked me who's on the hot seat of the 4 winless teams. Now, I don't think that it's a requirement that you be winless for your coach to be on the hot seat. But are we going to see an early season firing? Is Klopas really, really in trouble? If anybody has the inkling to fire a coach this early in the season, it's probably Joey Saputo, right? Most likely to fire a coach before the end of May in MLS. Who is it? I can't think of anybody more likely than Joey Saputo. not Merritt Paulson. Caleb Porter's not going anywhere. That's a commitment I imagine is going to be at least a couple of years. They have to fall so flat on their face for more than one season before Caleb Porter will lose his job. That's my sense there. Did you look around the rest of this league? Maybe you could argue that Precourt will have a short leash on his coach, but right for now, all systems are pretty much go with Greg Berhalter and the crew. MLSC, maybe that's the organization, the ownership that will say, we've got to make a change. They've gone through so many coaches at this point that you almost risk becoming that team. They probably already are. That doesn't give a coach a chance to settle in. Is Ryan Nelson good enough? He's inexperienced. He's learning on the job. He's certainly got the talent to get the job done. And really, all that matters in Toronto in 2014 is making the playoffs. They can finish 5th on win differential, which I think is the tiebreaker now. They can finish 5th with one more win than the team that finished 6th. Make the playoffs, and then I think everything is fine. And even if they go out in that first round, does that matter too much? Does that make a difference to MLSC? Will they say, well, Ryan Nelson isn't good enough? Vince from Toronto says that Mark Watson in San Jose should be on the hot seat. Tactics are Tony Pulis, but without the results. Mike in Philly, fire Hackworth. Okay. I mean, I think Philadelphia has shown enough positive signs that you really can't justify firing John Hackworth, can you? No. I know there are issues. I know a lot of people in Philadelphia don't really like the direction that John Hackworth has pushed that team. And yeah, they're not in a playoff position right now, but we're only 8 games in. Capacity for New York City FC at Yankee Stadium will be 33,000. Woo! That's a lot of people. I mean, look, I'm sure they don't expect to fill it up every week. Does it change your mind about New York City FC playing in Yankee Stadium if they actually get 33,000 out for more than 1 or 2 games? For league games, not friendlies, clearly. We're not talking about friendlies here. We're talking about league games. What is a good number? 347-756-6276. What is a good number for New York City FC at Yankee Stadium? Does it have to be 22? 25? What's a number? Give me the number. Because I think that people are going to be quick to judge. Yeah, I'm already on the record. Baseball stadium for soccer, no. No. But I'm gonna pull back and watch and see what happens. The things I need to see. I need to see people in that building. Yeah, okay, it's a bad fit. But as they're saying, most easily accessible stadium in New York or in the New York Metro, because not all the stadiums that New York teams play in are in New York. But you have the opportunity to drive your fan base to a place that they are already familiar with. Even if you don't go to Yankee games, you know where it is. You know how to get there. Or you have some kind of inkling. Oh, yeah, it's in the Bronx. Boom. There you go. So they should be able to drive fans to that stadium if the product is good enough. If there is actual interest, they're able to drum up actual interest. So again, what's the number? Trevor, I want to know from you. You defended this move. I get it. Understand. 20, 22, 25, 30. It's a number for success. 20,000 people is success. Or at least good enough for the 3 years that they're going to be in Yankee Stadium. Is that what you're saying? And then let's go build a stadium with 25 or 28 capacity, and then we'll fill it up. Vince from Toronto, you're on the air. What's up, man?
Oh, hey, Jason. With this whole thing with New York City FC, I think this is the proper term, but like you reap what you sow. I mean, that's what they say. I mean, they come into the league with all this fanfare. I think $100 million, right? This a true New York team, right? With their digs to the Red Bulls, and they don't have a stadium. They don't have any players either. And it's kind of just like, they tried to trot out this team. They gloss over the important fundamentals by
Wait,
just
whoa,
saying,
whoa, whoa, whoa.
by building. Okay,
How,
go ahead.
well, you assume that. I mean, I know that that's the way it looks from here. I don't believe anything was glossed over. I mean, MLS is not in a position to gloss over anything. Again, I think what we're looking at, Vince, and you can hate this or love it, because you can hate it because they don't have a stadium. They're going to be playing at Yankee Stadium. You know, New York hasn't proven that they're a great market for soccer because the Red Bulls can't sell it. Whatever your thoughts are on that part of it. But you can also see it as, look, in order to move forward, in order to get the league to a point where they're driving actual revenue from a TV contract that they can put back into the league, and then this league can compete with the Liga MX or whoever, that they need something like this. There are limited ways you can push the league forward from a marketing perspective. And I'm sorry, you know, smaller cities like Portland and Orlando are only going to do so much, and that's why you have New York and Atlanta. You may be fine with the way the league is. That's valid. People out there who are MLS fans who just like the league the way it is, they can be upset about New York and Atlanta. I totally get it. But if you are dreaming of MLS being one of the best leagues in the world, this stuff has to happen. I know it seems to be the cart ahead of the putting the cart ahead of the horse, Vince. But there's really no way around it from my perspective. What else can they do?
Yeah, you're right about it. I mean, you know, you're not going to turn down $100 million or whatever. And, you know, it is important for this kind of stuff to happen if we want the league to grow. Personally, I do feel a bit like, you know, MLS is kind of selling their soul
fair enough.
And lowering their standards for this to happen, which is unfortunate. But I guess, you know, I guess for the sake of progress, these things have to happen. You know, I'll tell you right now, Arthur Blank, you know, doesn't necessarily have me convinced, but I'm more optimistic about Atlanta, especially if you know what he says is true, and you know, and the people do care there, and that's the number one thing, right? The people go to the games.
I think that we are a little bit spoiled, which is fair. I mean, we've seen what's happened in Portland, and we've seen what's happened in places like RSL, which was never a slam dunk. We've seen what's going on in Orlando, and sort of the organic nature of some of this. Obviously, the Sons of Ben have set a standard as fans who have willed a team into their market, but there's going to be some ugliness to the way the sausage is made for MLS. That's going to turn some people off. I get it. I mean, you don't want to see soccer on a football field in Atlanta. You don't want to see soccer on a baseball stadium. By the way, 110 by 70 for the stadium. I mean, for the field at Yankee Stadium, which is the smallest allowed by FIFA. So we already knew they were going to be restricted by the size of the field, and there you go. So we'll see what that means for them. So I get it. You can argue that they've sold their soul. I don't know that means that I don't know that that's a bad thing, is what I'm saying. If you want the league to grow, again, it's certainly fine to think we've got enough teams. We don't really need to go anywhere else. We certainly don't need to put teams in baseball stadiums and football stadiums. Let's be happy with what we've got and let it grow slowly. But we're not a patient people, Vince. Americans, Canadians, whoever. We're not patient.
No, you're right. I mean, like you were saying earlier about you know, who's on the hot seat for coaches. I do believe Joey Saputo will probably lower the axe soon on Frank Lopez. And you know, I wanted to talk about that a bit, Jason, because you didn't really get to the TFC Dallas game.
No, didn't have a chance.
Where the refereeing was atrocious. First off, Gilberto got knocked over in the box, and it was a clear penalty, but nothing was called. But whatever, Toronto FC played like crap. We had no possession whatsoever, and it was frustrating because anytime we get the ball, Bradley he'd be Michael Bradley, but we'd lose the ball, and then we'd spend the next 5 minutes trying to get it back, and we'd give up like 5 set pieces for every time we got the ball, we lose it, give up 5 set pieces, get the ball back, lose it, give up another 5 set pieces. I was a man amongst boys when it came to just dominating our defense. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, Ryan Nelson isn't making any changes. He's not doing anything. It's early on in the season, but it worries me that this was the exact same situation against Colorado where we weren't seeing the ball at all. Ryan Nelson doesn't play a possession game. Our team is probably better built for having possession, especially with Michael Bradley. And I'm not saying that he doesn't know what he's doing, but I'm starting to question exactly what goes through his head, because we don't have it seems like his tactic is no possession is no problem. But I don't necessarily think that's a good fit for this kind of team.
All right, fair enough. You've lodged your complaints about Ryan Nelson at TFC. I appreciate the phone call, Vince. Thanks a lot, man.
No problem, Jason. Right. And just one more quick thing. If you have the best striker in Major League Soccer, in my opinion, Wondolowski, Mark Watson's got to be doing a better job of trying to get him chances. And if you watch San Jose's offense, they're so anemic. That's it, Jason. Thanks for taking my call.
I appreciate the phone call, man. Yeah, San Jose was so odd. In 2012, the absolute insane season they had, Supporter Shield winners, scored tons of goals. 2013, dropped off the face of the planet that way. 718, you're on the air.
Hey, what's going on, Jason? It's Eddie in Brooklyn.
Hey, what's up, Eddie? Appreciate you waiting through Vince in Toronto.
I know, geez, finally.
I like this.
No, I want to get back to the NYCFC thing.
All right.
As to what's a good number for the people showing up to the stadium. Whatever's higher than the league average. That's all right. That's got to be the minimum. That's the standard they set. It has to be higher than the league average.
I think the league average right now is somewhere around 18.5, 19. Depends on obviously the course of the season is going to give you a different average than the first 8 games, but we've seen I think the standard right now is just short of 20,000 for the average, and that's obviously pulled up by Seattle and brought down by San Jose, but I think that's probably a good number. I've got Jason Keenley on Twitter who's saying success is 2015, 25,000, 2016, 25,000, 2017, 28,000. I guess to show some build of momentum towards whatever stadium they're able to get. And Eddie, look, being a New York guy, I guess I got to ask you. I'm not going to ask you if you're going to be a New York City FC fan. I don't think that's happening.
God, no, I'm not going to be. Trust me, I'm not.
But I mean, in terms of what options they had to work with, was there anything that they could have done except end up at Yankee Stadium?
No, absolutely not. People need to understand that real estate in New York is not a joke. It's really not. And I mean, it's a pain for some people just to get a food truck, just space for a food truck, and you're talking about just getting a stadium for a professional soccer team. Like, the most sensible thing was Yankee Stadium, whether you like it or not. They really had no other choice. It's not the most accessible venue in New York. It's actually Barclays Center, because every train pretty much in the city can get to Atlantic Avenue.
Right.
Getting to the Bronx, for me, it's an easy train ride, but it's just a long one, and I hate going to the Bronx anyway. Don't expect me to be a season ticket holder or anything like that.
I'm not getting into borough rivalries, whatever. I'm not getting Mo Rivera, by the way, speaking at the press conference. I can't listen to him. I don't know what Mo's saying, but look, Mo's.
I want to talk about that. Everything about, and this is why I love New York City FC. They're making it so easy for me to hate them. and I was already a Red Bulls fan, but this to me is the most artificial franchise I have ever seen in MLS history. Everything that they do is so fake to me.
It's shades of gray.
It's staged. It's not authentic.
What do you mean it's not authentic? You don't know that. The dude loves football. What's the problem?
Oh my God. They tweet things like pictures of people in NYCFC gear. I haven't yet to see these people. Who are these people that they're finding? I swear to God, I think that they're actually just shipping them, telling people to take pictures and tweet them at us, and we'll retweet them. I don't see people caring about this team. I don't hear anybody being excited about it. I go all over the city all the time. Where are these people?
All right, fair enough. I mean, it's a very large, diverse city that has lots of people doing lots of different things that maybe they're all hiding from you. Trevor says he saw 19 people wearing their stuff at a Yankee game last week. So it's out there. It's out there, man. It's out there.
That's probably all they have right now is 19 people.
Maybe it is, Eddie. Maybe it is. But let me just bring this back to the whole artificial thing. I get it from a perspective of, an original Metro fan, which I imagine is what you are, that this seems even more artificial than everything else that happens in MLS. But this is a league. Somebody came at me about organic on Twitter or something. I don't even remember where I had this argument about what's organic and what's not. This is MLS. There's nothing organic happening here. Okay, even if you want to point to the Sons of Ben, that's not organic. The league decided, oh, look, there's a built-in fan base. They got some people making noise at MLS Cups. Their team's not even in. Let's go in and check out Philadelphia. Oh, look, there's an ownership group that might be interested. Oh, look, they can get a stadium built in Chester, which is nowhere near the city center, by the way. So it's all calculated. Everything is calculated. To throw Mo Rivera, that seems like the smallest little bit of artificial that you could possibly have, Eddie. Considering everything else that they're going to be doing with this team, I get it. It doesn't seem like there's a fan base already there, and I know that bothers people. But this is a league that started with no sense that there was a fan base already there.
No, I understand that. I find it condescending a little bit. You know, like their entire plan is to get people who basically don't care about MLS. I genuinely think that that's the fan base they're going after. That they're going to bring in, you know, what they call the quote unquote Euro snob, like people like my father, who's already telling me he's going to be an NYCFC fan. So that's going to be fun.
That's why I love that.
I apologize to Red Bulls. I failed. I tried taking them to games. I tried everything. It didn't work.
Look, Eddie.
So congratulations, NYCFC.
Okay,
you got one of them.
You may be right that it certainly feels like that on some level. They got those close connections with Manchester City, and I raked them over the coals for not getting their own identity out there and sort of leaning on everything City. It didn't seem like they were their own team. They were just sort of this extension of Manchester City. They're finally getting some of their own stuff out there, the colors or whatever you could argue with, but they're at least trying to create something. And Trevor makes a point, and you can tell me, if Red Bulls did more within the city, would there be more Red Bull fans already existing within New York? Because that's the other people they're going after, the people who might be interested in MLS but aren't being encouraged. You know, the favor's not being encouraged. They're not being swayed by Red Bulls for whatever reason.
No, because there's not a marketing dollar that would have gotten people to Harrison, New Jersey. That's the ultimate thing. There's not a marketing dollar, any amount you could have spent. It's a pain in the ass, excuse my language. It's a pain for me to get to Red Bull Arena from Brooklyn. But I do it because that's my club and I have that kind of dedication. Not everybody is me. Not everybody has that kind of dedication. Getting to Harrison, New Jersey is not easy. People need to understand it's a quest. It's going, especially by public transit. It's a mess. So unless they played in New York proper, it wasn't happening. It just wasn't.
No. I appreciate the phone call, Eddie. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate your support.
All right, take care, dude.
All right. Because Eddie in Brooklyn, New York Red Bulls fan in Brooklyn, giving us his perspective on NYCFC, who has just dropped the official word that they will play in Yankee Stadium for at least 3 seasons. 70 by 110 is your field dimensions. Apparently, Christ is saying the width is not a problem. That's the way we played at RSL. And yeah, BBVA Compass Stadium is a postage stamp. So there will be other stadiums with fields that are smaller than what they'll be playing on in New York. Another good point brought to me by Seth on Twitter. The Yankee Stadium problem is that all the seats face home plate. Need to hand out Advil for the fans for all that neck pain. Is that a legit? I mean, to be honest with you, that sort of slipped by me because I've never watched a soccer game in a baseball stadium. Is that honestly a problem? They're going to figure out some way to configure that so they're not making people twist in their seats. I mean, you'll have some standing fans. Not everybody's going to stand up. 240, you're on the air.
Hey, I don't know if you need more New York opinions, but I also have one.
Okay, you have like a minute before I got to get out of here, so go ahead.
I'm very confused about how it's going to work in a baseball stadium. And, I think everybody's really excited that they have Jason Kreis, and they're, sort of excited that good football might be played, but nobody knows who any of the players are going to be. I don't know if they're going to be, like home field advantages to playing in Yankee Stadium, or if, nobody's going to even go.
Oh, that remains to be seen. I'm looking at the configuration right now. They've sent some mock-ups out to the media. One goal is essentially 3/4 of the way down the right field line. The other goal is left field, basically. So it runs from the main stand out to the outfield bleachers. It looks like you could get a decent. Now, there's nobody along the pitch side. There's nobody right along the field. But
how wide is it? Is it going to be like one of those fields where it's like a basketball field and they're kicking it like that? Is it going to be like a Stoke City type situation, or is it wide?
It's 110 by 70, which is not big by any stretch of the imagination. It's relatively small, but I think Jason Kreis is going to do everything he can within the confines of this. I don't know that it makes for good soccer. I really don't. We have to see that. They have to deliver that. But if anybody has the opportunity to create that situation, it's Jason Kreis. It's at least that. I appreciate the phone call, man. I got to get going. All right, here's what I remind you again. Soccer Morning, listener supported. You guys have been amazing to this point. We need you to push harder. SoccerMorning.com is where you can go to find out how you can support the show. We do have all of that DJ for a day and guest hosting spots, and all of those things are still available over there at SoccerMorning.com. Thank you to everybody who's helped us out so far. Thanks to Charlie Boehm, MLSsoccer.com, SoccerWire.com, USSoccerPlayers.com. For talking MLS with us today, and thank you to Luke Moore from the Football Ramble for talking Premier League. All right, am I missing anything? I'm not sure. I may be missing a lot of stuff, but luckily we've got 4 more shows this week. Today's only Monday. We get Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. And speaking of, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow, Tuesday. All right, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks to Alex DeYoung for our music today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.